So, what is one hospitality trend that you believe is being underestimated?
Underestimated. Good question. I think maybe sleep tourism is being a little underestimated. I know it's trending, right? People are talking about it. But I think more and more people are going to be traveling to get rest, right? We think of travel, or we've historically thought of it as let's go to a new city and pack as much in as we can, see as many sites as we can. And a lot of people still do that. But more and more people are traveling for a week or two to get away from their 9 to 5 and just relax, get some quality rest in. And some hotels are embracing this. They're putting in nicer pillows, nicer sheets, white noise machines, but I still think it's underrated. I think more properties could be embracing that trend.
Welcome to another episode of Deep Current, the podcast where we go beneath the surface of hospitality and technology to understand the operational challenges, business decisions, and innovations shaping the industry. Today's guest may have one of my favorite titles so far. Jared Lerner is the founder and CEO of and Chief Sleep Evangelist at Nappr, a platform helping people book hotel rooms for a few hours when they need somewhere private and comfortable to rest or work or reset. So Nappr is also helping hotels approach their inventory differently by creating revenue from rooms that might otherwise sit unused during the day. Jared, welcome to Deep Current.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
For sure. So before we get into the hotel inventory technology and the business model per se, when did you realize that the world needed easier access to a good nap?
So I started working on Nappr way back in 2014. It's something that is personal to me because I've always had a lot of sleep problems, and I've experienced this problem while traveling many times. I used to take a lot of red eyes. I would land in a new city at 6 a.m. and have nowhere to go. Just really exhausted. I don't sleep well on planes, and most people don't, So I was experiencing the problem often, and I always thought there was a better way to get people sleep and rest in the middle of a crazy day.
Amazing. I love that. And was there a specific trip or experience that triggered that idea, or was something that was just building up during time?
I think it was multiple trips. There were several occasions where, I had the red eye, and then I would have to just lay in the hotel lobby for hours. I would try to walk around a city. Like when I went to Reykjavik, this was back in 2017. Red eye flight, you get there at 6 or 7. I was so exhausted. And, it's fun to walk around for a bit, but you can't even have an enjoyable experience. You can't take in all the sights when you're that tired. So that was one instance where I was just like, wow, this is a long day already, and I just want to get a nap in. But it was multiple trips to Europe, I think, that really got me thinking about this. Also flying to Portugal, France, multiple trips where you kind of have to take a red eye. The alternative is to take a 10 a.m. flight and get there at night, which I actually prefer given my sleep problems. But, most of the flights land in the daytime or land in the early morning. And I think most people just power through with caffeine. So it's not fun. It's not ideal, but that's the status quo. And hotel hours are kind of antiquated, right? They don't let you check in until 3. It's always been that way. And that's kind of how hotels are as a whole. They have been the same way for 100 years. Check in at 3, check out at 10 or 11, no in between, unless you have tier status like Marriott Ambassador or one of those programs. So most of us don't. And we're kind of stuck in this, weird place where we're really tired, but we can't sleep. So you have to force your body to get through it with caffeine or some other means. And, it's obviously a huge pain point for millions of people. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. And how or when did you shift this from a personal frustration into something you believe could help or become a real company?
so back when I founded Nappr in 2014, it was a different business model. I envisioned a brick and mortar place where people could take naps as needed with a membership model. And I wanted to have different stores around New York and other cities eventually And that's the idea that I ran with for about 3 years. Me and a few colleagues at the time at the company I was at were working on this part time in between working hours. And we were making some good progress, but we realized it was very capital intense. So we never really got that off the ground without funding. And our advisor at the time suggested switching to a marketplace model because Airbnb was doing really well back then and marketplaces were hot. So we pivoted. My colleagues left me and I started back from square one. They liked the brick and mortar idea more. But nonetheless, I kept going, kept marching along. And then I was thinking, let's do homes and apartments. Let's have Airbnb hosts list for like an hour or two if they want to. So that's the idea I ran with for the next 3 years with a different founder. And that was all set to launch in 2020. Everything was there. The tech was built. We had some users lined up. And then the pandemic hit and no one was really going in anyone's home. So that was another setback for us. Back to square one. We scrapped that. Never stopped working though throughout the pandemic. And 3 years later, we were able to launch with this hotel model. Thankfully, one of our competitors approached us and saw what we were trying to do and said, would you be interested in hotels? They have day rates, they have vacancy in the daytime. And it's not really something I ever thought of, honestly. You hear hotel and you think overnight stay. And that's still the case. Almost everyone assumes that hotels are overnight. So that's where I was at the time. I'd never been in hospitality before or travel really. And it was a new space for me, but it made so much sense. Hotels exist for this reason, to help people rest. And I wasn't aware that they had all this vacancy in the middle of the day. But since they do, it's really a win win for everyone. They get to fill additional space and get more revenue. And then the consumer gets a day rate
Mhm.
instead of having to pay for an entire overnight rate. And then we take a commission. So it's a model that really benefits everyone.
And it's something very interesting to me because before we spoke last week, I had no idea this was a thing even. So the consumer problem is easy to understand, right? You arrive with a red eye or whatever, and you have to wait until like 3 p.m. for the check-in, and then you have to, as you said, you're exhausted, like walking around for 6 hours trying to wait for a room to open. So recognizing the problem is is a thing, but building the marketplace around it is very, very different. So how did the original idea evolve into Nappr model that exists today? Was it because of this competitor you mentioned that mentioned the hotels?
Yeah, I think that's really what spurred the current model because I saw what they were doing and they're really geared towards a broad audience and I figured let's gear this as a health and wellness tool. Let's pitch sleep more than anything with this model. So that's how we deviated a little from what they're doing. It's similar inventory, but we're the only company in our space that really stresses rest and recovery. So that's kind of how, we built our marketplace.
Very interesting. And what was the first hotel conversation like? I mean, because do all hotels have day rates first of all, and then how did that conversation went?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Hotels will almost never sell these rates directly to consumers, probably because they're afraid of cannibalizing their overnight rates. And there's also a connotation, even today, with prostitution, and day rates. So no one wants to be affiliated with that. But at the same time, they still want to make money. So they're happy to sell these rates as long as a middleman does it for them. So, it's not a hard sell when we're trying to get hotels on board. They have vacancy. Every business wants to make money or more money. So if we can even get them a few bookings, it's worth it for them. It's risk free to join our platform. We don't charge you to list. We only charge you a commission when you get a booking. So for the hotels, it's kind of a no brainer. Every hotel should be on our platform. And we have over 5,000 to date. So we're trying to get 10 or 15,000 by the end of the year and eventually every hotel.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And when you first began speaking with the hotels, how much unused daytime inventory were they actually dealing with?
When we first joined in 2023, so this industry is still fairly new. I'd say 10 or 15 years old, which, is not that long. And a couple of companies like our competitors, including the one we work with, have validated the idea. So hotels, most of them know about this, some of them don't. So, it's been done before. We're not the first company doing this. And I think because they know about those other companies and that it's a thing, they're a little more okay with exploring this business model. But yeah, it's still a very new thing and still very under the radar.
Okay.
So even a lot of people in hospitality don't know about this because I've been to conferences where I've pitched this and they just had no clue. So
And
even people in the industry don't know.
and that was going to be my next question. When you pitch to them, it's do they realize that they're like missing on revenue? I mean, how long do the hotels accept it that those rooms are sitting empty? I mean, is that something that they just accept and just go with it?
Uh, yeah, I think it's something they never wanted to sell directly, right? So to them, that was an okay trade off. But now that they see third party vendors doing it for them, I think it's a lot easier of a decision. Why wouldn't they do this? If they have the same vacancy every day, and that tends to be the case, a hotel will give us 2 or 3 time slots, sometimes more, sometimes 4 or 5, the same ones every day, same prices. They update the prices a little bit, but the times usually stay the same because they have consistent vacancy at those times, including our most popular time slot, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., which is right after a red eye. So that makes sense.
Mhm.
But that slot is empty a lot because people check out early. 30% of guests will check out before 6 a.m., I think. And 30% will check in after 6 p.m. So you have this big gap in the daytime. And that's why 8 to 2 is such a popular time slot for this model. The room is made, but it's sitting empty.
And it makes sense to be honest. I mean, it's there's I personally I always check out either very late and I already paid for that stay, which makes no sense if I'm not gonna stay the night, or I check out very early. So I am the exact example of that usually. So hotels spend decades optimizing like the overnight stay. You mentioned it already. But you're introducing a new question. What happens between the traditional checkout and the check-in window? From the hotel's perspective, is that the biggest opportunity in daytime inventory, or is it like, do you want to like fill the vacant rooms, listen to new opportunities of revenue, and how is Nappr taking care of that inventory per se?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that's the easiest way to frame it to them, right? You're leaving money sitting on the table. These rooms are empty. It's pretty much like an airline seat. If it doesn't get filled, the airline doesn't get the revenue, right? So that's why they discount the fares sometimes to fill those seats. And, you know, with any service industry like this, any service business, you want to maximize your capacity. So that's typically how we'll frame it, right? You have all these rooms. A hotel is almost never 100% full. Maybe if there's a big conference in town or, like the World Cup was here. So that could fill a hotel, but in the event that there's room, which is almost always the case, we are there to help them. So I think it's just an optimization layer sitting on top of their existing layer, right? And it's interesting because, and this is a whole other discussion, I guess, but their existing property management systems are not built for day stays. They're only built for overnight stays and they're not really retrofittable for day stays.
Hmm.
So at least not the current design. So they have to kind of fragment this alongside their PMS systems. And we email them when we get a booking.
Okay.
So we can't even put it into the PMS. Some of the PMS systems do allow for that, but most don't. And they would prefer not using that anyway because it costs them a few dollars to use the PMS for every transaction. So this is totally a workaround on top of that, but it works. The front desk gets the email, they will read it and they'll put it into the system. So that's another challenge for the hospitality industry. The technology is behind a lot of other industries. And it's getting there, it's catching up, but it's still a little antiquated. So,
Got it. Got it. No, and it makes sense. And the other thing that I was thinking, what you were just saying, that is that if you get someone to book a room, if it's even for 3, 4 hours, you're getting them to the property, and the property usually has a restaurant, has a coffee shop or whatever. So you're actually adding revenue, or the likeliness of getting more revenue out of those amenities that they already have. which is
Yeah,
interesting. So
that's another benefit for the hotel, right? You're probably using their amenities. Also, you're bringing in guests that may not have booked you otherwise. So you're bringing in a new loyalty member. If it's a five-star property, you may not have wanted to pay for an overnight rate, but the day stay might be affordable enough. And then, yeah, you're in their system now. So it's a big opportunity for hotels, which is why I think every hotel should be on our platform eventually, right? There's no reason for them not to, unless they were seeing consistent logistical problems. But they've figured out how to work around the day stays in terms of cleaning the rooms on demand and just how to navigate that with their overnight model. For the most part, it's fine. So, other than that, there's no reason for them to not be on our platform.
amazing. And trying to go a little bit deeper, does it happen often that a hotel says we don't have inventory for this? Is that generally true?
You mean after they get a day stay?
I
And
mean, if you're trying to sell the idea for them, like,
Mhm.
hey, you're losing revenue on this, so you could probably have day stays. Does it happen that they say we don't have inventory for this, or no, not at all? They know that they have the capacity.
I think they all know they have the capacity to do it, but for some hotels, it's a little too foreign of an idea, too different. Like I mentioned before, hospitality has been the same way for a long time. And if they're so used to doing a certain model and they don't want to experiment, that's sometimes the case, right? But I think they all know they have the vacancy because even the Manhattan hotels here that are right in Midtown, the busiest hotels, they still have 10 or 15% vacancy at least on any given day. So, and that's why we have so many hotels in Manhattan. We have 95 here in the five boroughs, many of those in Manhattan. So it's our biggest city supply wise. So yeah, any hotel could theoretically join us. And even if they do have no vacancy most of the time, they can still list on demand, right? They can list it for a certain day, take it off a certain day. It's very flexible.
Makes sense. And can you put a number around the typical revenue opportunity that this implies for a hotel?
Really depends how many rooms they give us, how many times, and how they're pricing it. Some hotels get hundreds of day rate bookings a year. Really depends, on the city. There's a lot of variables there, but it could be tens of thousands of dollars, right? Like we've generated almost $300,000 of gross sales for hotels to date. So,
It's a great number for
yeah,
sure. Amazing. And what distinguishes a hotel that performs well on Nappr from one that doesn't?
I think a lot of hotels price it a little too high. We have rates discounted up to 75 or 80% off the overnight rate. And if you're pricing it between 50 and 75, that's going to get booked. If it's in a good city, good location, if with that discount, it's probably going to be booked at least a few times a month. If you only discount it like 10 or 20%, that might have a guest questioning whether they should just book an overnight rate at that
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
So really depends on the price and of course the quality of the hotel. So we have all the major brands on our platform and many boutiques, and half of our bookings are actually at boutique hotels. So it's a split 50-50. So it's not like everyone wanting to book a Marriott. It's just what's the most convenient, what has a good rating, what has a good price, right? So that really will dictate how many bookings a hotel will get.
Great. Perfect. And you mentioned something that was very interesting before. You say that some hotels are worried that a discounted daytime room could cannibalize an overnight booking, or that could be used for something that is not like prostitution or stuff like that. How do you help them think through that concern?
Yeah, it's a good question. We do some vetting with our guests, and we'll give the hotel all the necessary information about that person. At the end of the day, they're really the gatekeeper, right? They can turn anyone away if they want to. It's still up to them. We haven't really had any issues with that. So, 2.5 years, we've been okay with, the guests that we're sending to the hotels. I will say, we probably could add additional layers of, ID checks and verification, but we've seen it work really smoothly for the most
Yeah.
part.
And
So
if you do that extra layer of security, maybe it will turn people away as well. So yeah, you have to keep a balance.
potentially,
Yeah.
yeah. I think already going through 2 layers, you have to go through us and then the hotel. That's already another step. So, yeah, I think it could be a little too much friction if we did too much security checking, but it is important to stop some of the bad use cases, right?
Yeah,
Especially human trafficking.
yeah,
Definitely don't want that. So anything we can do to help prevent that, we would love to do.
of course, it makes sense. And have you had any or much resistance because of the stigma around the hotels by the hour? Or is it something that they understand that you're providing an extra layer of security and helping them get quality bookings?
From the hotel perspective, so we have 2 to 12-hour rates for the most part. Some of our rates in India are longer, but everywhere else, it's that time range between 5 a.m. and midnight. And it's really up to the hotel. If they don't want to give 2-hour rates because they have a connotation of like shady or whatever, they can just give us a 6-hour rate or an 8-hour rate. So it really lays with them. What times and prices do you want to give us? 2-hour rates are pretty rare, I will say. They do exist, but for the hotel, they want a certain amount of revenue for each day rate. So they'll get more if they have a 4-hour rate versus a 2-hour rate. And, you know, ideally for our customers, we would have 1-hour rates even. Sometimes you just need it for an hour to shower and, you know, just kind of refresh a little bit and then go on to your day, whatever else you're doing. So it'd be great to have 1 to 24 hours. And that's why we want to have Airbnb hosts on our platform as well with homes and apartments. Those could be however long the host wants to make them. And I think you will see some 1-hour rates on there for that. So the more convenience and accessibility we can give our customers, the better.
Perfect. That makes sense. And moving to the guest perception. So there's also like a confidence or trust issue that they want to, if for some reason they have a delayed flight or whatever, they want to still know, they want to have the confidence that the booking's still available, right? And that the front desk will recognize that reservation. So what has Nappr had to build operationally, not just technologically, to create that confidence?
Yeah, we do get emails when someone books. Sometimes, they'll ask, how do I know this is confirmed? And I always get back to people right away when they do that. But yeah, I think for most people, they see a big brand like Marriott and Hilton, and it reassures them that everything will be okay. 99% of the time, it is. The other 1% or less than 1%, even, a hotel will overbook, and then we will step in and get that person rebooked somewhere else when that happens. But I think for the most part, we have really good reviews on the app stores and on Google. So that helps people, it helps reassure them a little bit. But yeah, the brand names definitely help, I would say. These aren't tiny chains, right? You see all these big brands listed, and you could call the hotel ahead of time if you want to, just to confirm it. We we suggest not doing that because not all front desk agents are trained on day rates. So they
Yeah, of
might
course.
not be able to find it, but you can call the hotel. Can't stop people from doing that. So
Yeah, no, and to be honest, I mean, it's very interesting everything that you're mentioning, and I wanna for our listeners, right, that probably have never used Nappr. This is the first time they're hearing about Nappr. If you go to your website or you want to book something, how does that process look? I mean, is it as simple as booking like a hotel at, I don't know, booking.com or whatever? Is it pretty similar? Is the platform, did you create a specific platform for Nappr around that idea?
so we made this as simple as possible, the booking process, because we know people might be tired and in the middle of a really hectic day. It's actually easier than Expedia or Booking. It's geolocated, so you can allow a location and then it'll show you the hotels right near you if you want to book nearby. And then browsing is very easy. You have all the filters by distance, time, price, rating. And then booking is also very easy. Most of our rates are pay later at the hotel. So you don't even have to put in a credit card. You just put in some info, your name, your email, your phone number, and then why you're booking if you want to tell us. And then you can reserve it in less than a minute. So
Great.
it's very, very simple. And when I was designing this UI UX, I had that in mind because, when someone's really tired, everything is twice as hard or 3 times as hard to do, right? When your brain's not all there. So, Yeah, it is a very seamless process to book.
I love it. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely start using it. It sounds pretty simple. So speaking about challenges, you mentioned this a couple of times, but you have two customers, right? For Nappr specifically, you have the guest and the hotel. So operationally speaking, what is the most challenging thing right now?
I think the most challenging thing is brand awareness and getting out to the masses of people who could use this sort of thing.
Okay.
We've definitely reached a bunch, but not every traveler knows about us. Not every busy professional who could use this for meetings in the middle of the day knows about us, right? So, as a small startup with a lean marketing budget, getting out there to millions of people is the biggest challenge for sure. We already have a lot of hotels, of course, and we're expecting to double that supply in the very near future. So demand has always been the trickier part for us than the supply, especially since we get a lot of our inventory through partners and it's easy to just tack those on with an API.
And
So
has that been the issue since the beginning, like brand awareness and getting people to use it more?
I think so. And
Okay.
that's why we run a lot of Google ads. Those help. I put tons of flyers all over New York and other cities too that I travel to where we have inventory. A lot of guerrilla marketing, crosswalk stickers, city bike stickers, whatever I can do to increase the visibility. Because not only are our potential customers unaware of us, but they're unaware of the concept as a whole. They don't really know about our competitors either. So it's our job to educate the market about the concept in general, which is an interesting position to be in. Most other industries have a Goliath company who's, got their footing and have huge market share and everyone knows about them like an Uber or an Airbnb, but it's not the case with microstays at hotels. So that's been challenging as well. Like we've had to validate the concept additionally alongside our competitors. But yeah, brand awareness, it's getting there. We're making strides, but it's a slow process. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
And hopefully content like this, like speaking to in podcasts and generating more content can reach a lot more audiences. So I love you. That's so I love it and thank you for being here. That's great. So if you think about manual processes that you probably have right now, and maybe if you can, I mean, it can work very easy if you have like 10 bookings, but if you start getting like 10,000, it could fall apart, right? So is everything in Nappr automated right now? Or do you have like some manual work that could be automated?
So we do have a chat bot. We use Intercom or Fin, I guess they rebranded, which is pretty good. But when someone says speak to agent, I'll jump in. So that's pretty manual. I come from a customer service background. I worked in it for 18 years. So I actually don't mind doing the customer service. I'll jump in whenever I need to, whether it's like a Saturday morning or like midnight in the middle of the week. If I see something that needs immediate attention, I'll hop on it. So, it is manual though, right? It's not scalable to do that. So, we'll have to hire customer service agents eventually.
Or partners who handle your customer service. Yeah, they also exist. There are companies that do that. So it makes sense. So yeah, there's some things that you still have to do manually, which is part
Yes.
of it, right? So
Still
like
wear a lot of hats. Yeah. We're
yeah,
using AI more and more. We're not AI native, of course, but we are using it internally quite a bit. And, we are using it for customer service, but only on like very basic questions like, can I check in early? Or, you know, can I bring a guest? People with basic questions get those resolved with the bot. But other cases where, like, if a hotel can't find the booking, I'll have to step in.
yeah. No, and it makes sense. And I think as you keep evolving, the business will keep. Sorry, as you keep growing, the business will keep evolving, which makes sense. So hotels already operate through property management systems, right? Like revenue management. You mentioned this at the beginning, channel managers, like payment platforms or whatever. So is adding this other sales channel a complication for them, or does it communicate seamlessly? How do you integrate this daytime inventory with the hotel technology that they currently have?
Yeah, so it is very fragmented right now. And we actually want to develop a solution that'll integrate the two eventually. But yeah, PMS systems aren't built for day stays. So, like I mentioned before, we have to email the hotel when we get a booking, and then they'll put it manually into their system, I guess, alongside the property management system so that they know that the day stay is happening. But it is a workaround, right? It's a hack. It's not ideal. There should be one system that counts day stays as a half a night and night stays as a whole night that can really handle both of these inventory types, but that's not the case. So, yeah, and it's always been that way. Interestingly enough, I learned from our partners that hotels have always done this and they're okay with it, but it's not the way it should be, right? And if it was integrated, then we'd probably see almost no issues with guests being overbooked, right? Because just wouldn't happen. The system wouldn't allow it to happen. But because a lot of these hotels set these day rates and leave them and don't pull them when they have a full night, there is the potential for these issues. And like I said, they're like less than 1% of the time. They're not very often, but they do happen. And it's primarily because the systems are so separate.
And you already mentioned this, like PMS and RMS systems or products are designed exclusively for overnight stays, right? So does this inaccurate inventory cost you when a guest is already standing at the front desk? Or do you have to keep, like, since they have separate systems, does someone at the front desk might not know that there's a new system for the day rate or for the day booking? I mean, have you seen that become an issue? Have you had any complaints around that?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest problem on the hotel side. If the manager doesn't train the front desk agent on day stays, because some of them will be trained and some won't be sometimes. Like the one who is trained will see the booking and they'll put it into the system, everything will be fine. But then if a new agent is there when that guest arrives, they might not understand what a day rate is and they might not be able to find the reservation. And then someone will email us and say, hey, the hotel says they can't find the reservation. I gave them the confirmation number. I told them about Nappr, and I'll let them know. Sorry about this. Some agents just aren't trained on this system, so that always tends to be the case. Really, maybe like less than 10% of the time, it's something else, but it's usually a lack of training or knowledge.
Which
And
could
then
be solved, with what you mentioned, right? A system like a PMS or RMS that integrates both, right? It should be straightforward.
that would make it easier for everybody. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I understand the pain point. I understand that they're accustomed to doing things a certain way. So it's a new industry per se. It's the same industry, but with a new portion or a new way of doing business in that industry. So it makes sense that people need to get used to it for sure. So I think Nappr has spoken publicly about improving instant reservations and using AI to connect with property and revenue management systems, right? What would a truly seamless version of that experience look like for you?
So there are other instances where we can, or other areas where we can implement AI. I think, helping the guest find their ideal stay, it's still pretty seamless at the moment, right? Like it takes less than a minute to search, but if an AI tool could pinpoint exactly what the guest is looking for, we could help them with that. And then on the hotel side, I think we can implement AI to help the hotels dynamically price their inventory. Because right now we don't, and it's static, and they're just putting in whatever they want, and they usually set it and forget it. So they'd probably do a lot more business if we offered a dynamic pricing tool that lowered it maybe 10 or 20% as the day got closer. I don't know if they would want to lower their prices, but having something is better than nothing, right? So I think that's another area where we could really leverage AI quite a bit.
And how long would it take, do you think, for the industry to support this properly without companies like Nappr pushing the model forward?
How long would it take to have a PMS that supports day stays?
Or for the industry in general to adapt to day stays? Yeah.
Yeah, it might take a while, because It's already a 15-year industry. It hasn't happened yet. We have the capability to integrate them, but there isn't really a priority to. So I think it's going to take a while, maybe a few more years before that happens, even if we develop a solution for hotels where the two stay types are integrated and everything is seamless. They still have to adapt to it and accept it. And hotels are very slow with that kind of thing. So it's not going to be an overnight solution. That's for sure.
And what you're describing is something that we frequently see in hospitality, right? The hospitality technology is basically PMS, RMS. It's the most common thing. Some of them have different things, but those are the bread and butter, right? So I guess facing idea should be simple, and but understanding that you have the inventory, the pricing, the payments, and everything, it could be often spread across different systems that were never designed to be together. So we usually, I mean, at Oceans, we usually address a layer without custom platforms. We do like workflow automation, stuff like that. But what I want to ask you was, where do you think that there could be an additional capacity or technical capacity to accelerate this pain or create or accelerate the solution to this pain?
I think if something was built, even if it was just like a lean MVP that showed hotels how much easier it is to have one system, proof is in the pudding, right? If you show them a demo where like everything just happens automatically. You don't have to read an email and put it in and hopefully the front desk agent sees it. There's a lot of opportunity or there's more of a chance of error there, right? So if you can decrease that margin of error to near zero, then I think it would be an easier sell to the hotel. They're going to wonder how much it'll cost, of course, but day stays are getting more popular, right? They're not going away, and a lot of people need them. It's a very high demand thing. So, I think the more popular they get, the more willing hotels will be to implement these solutions. And like I said, you're going to have to show them that it works and that it's easy to use and that it's all baked into one thing. But even a decent solution would be better than having two separate systems that don't talk to each other. That's just not the way it should be built.
I understand for sure. And moving more to the customer and like the journey and so on, what is your ideal customer profile or the journey look like for them?
Yeah, so I like to tell people that our ICPs 25 to 50, pretty big age range. They're either traveling or in the middle of a hectic day, maybe they're a busy professional in between meetings. They have some sort of need to rest and relax, some disposable income, and caffeine's just not doing it for them. So that's most of our guests, I would say. We get a lot of travelers, business travelers, leisure travelers with kids, and the kids need a nap. People with long shifts who just need a haven or oasis. So a lot of use cases there. But a lot of the people who tell us why they're booking are doing so for a travel use case, like early red eye, long layover. You know, we see a bunch of those. So
Okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned before that the main issue right now, which is not an issue, I mean, it's something in the making, but it's awareness, right? So, how do people usually discover Nappr right now? Is it through Google Ads, social media?
Google Ads work pretty well for us because 62% of our bookings are same day. So someone is looking for something on the spot. It's impulsive. Like, I need a place to go for a few hours. Where can I nap for a few hours? Where can I rest? And those searches, got us a decent amount of bookings or get us. So that's been a really good driver for us. Beyond that, our guerrilla marketing definitely gets a lot of scans. People are curious. What is this hourly hotel rate that gets us up to 75% off? I want to take a closer look at that. So especially in a city like New York, there's so many people walking around, especially in the summer. So that definitely helps. But I think from a scaling perspective, Google Ads, Meta Ads, those are really good for something like this.
I love the concept. I like the concept of this is, as I said before, it's something new to me. So I love the concept, and I think it's something that a lot of people should be aware of and take advantage of for sure. I also see a marketplace problem here, maybe like a chicken and the egg problem, right? So travelers want lots of nearby hotels before they download and trust like a platform per se, but hotels want a proven traveler demand before dedicating inventory and staff attention, right? So how do you tackle this problem? I mean, what comes first?
Well, I think selling to hotels, like the validation's there already, right? We can tell them that every major hotel brand is on our platform and thousands of boutiques. So when they hear that, I think it alleviates their concerns. You know, they're not the test dummy for this. This has existed for 15 years. So even if they don't get any demand from being on our platform, there is literally no risk, right? Like someone is not going to see that Courtyard Marriott is on Nappr and say, "Oh my gosh, they're on Nappr. I'm never going to book them again." You know,
No, of course.
that'd be like really weird for someone to have that mentality. So, I think the validation is definitely there, right? If anyone's concerned about being on our platform, they can list one time slot for like 4 hours, price it very high, and then maybe decrease it a little bit over time, but very minimal risk. And then yeah, convincing travelers to do it, I think that's the bigger hurdle, right? Because it's a new behavior, it's different from what we've always been told about hotels, right? So there is a paradigm shift that is there, but they already know these brands, right? They already know Marriott, Hilton, Sheraton, and they've used them their whole lives. So I think using them for a day stay is not the craziest thing, right? You're not telling them to flip their behavior, you're just telling them to change the hours of the stay. So
No, of course.
interestingly enough, sorry, I just wanted to mention that whenever I pitch this to people, I almost always hear a story about when they could have used this.
Yeah, of course.
I hear like, "Oh gosh, I wish I knew about you guys 2 years ago when I was on this trip. I had to sleep at the airport and I would have used Nappr," you know? So, I don't think there's, an obstacle there where people would be afraid to try it. I just think they don't know about it.
Exactly.
That's the biggest thing.
And I agree. And to be honest, I mean, I personally have examples of when I can use it. You now have thousands of properties listed, right? You have also properties inside hotels, I heard, or sorry, properties inside airports as well. Imagine that when you're having like long layovers, you could probably use that too.
Yeah, being in an airport is ideal, right? So, some of our hotels are within the actual airport. We have a Fairmont in Vancouver, for example, and that is the best of both worlds because the traveler is so tired, they don't wanna go a mile or 2, like, if they have to, then they will to get to their hotel, but if it's right there for them, that's great. So, we would love to have more hotels within airports, and additionally, this is also why we want to have our own stores in airports, in every major terminal, right? Because it'd be much more convenient, much more accessible if you could just get off your flight and then there's a Nappr waiting for you, right? You could book it while you're on the flight. You could book a half hour, an hour, whatever you need. The current solutions within airports are okay, but a lot of them don't have beds. Even the nicest airport lounge, like Centurion, you can't take a nap. So this is another big pain point, right? Within the airport itself.
For me, it's the shower part, to be honest. Like, to be able to
Yes.
have a
Yeah,
shower.
shower.
That would have made a huge difference on long flights. I mean, when I had
Hmm.
to go all the way to Asia or stuff like that, like landing in LA and saying, I've been on a plane for 14 hours, I would like to take a shower. I mean, that's like the most basic thing. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I want to give you the magic wand question. This is the one of the questions that I love the most. So if you have a magic wand and you could fix one operational or technological challenge at Nappr tomorrow, like you just wave it around and say this is going to be fixed. What would that thing be, or what would create a biggest impact?
So right now we're working on a proprietary API that we can just feed to OTAs like Expedia and Booking,
Hmm.
and then they could list our inventory with that, upsell it very easily, right? They know who has a red eye, they know who has a layover, they're already upselling rental cars. So That is what I would wave my magic wand for, to have that done tomorrow so that we can just kind of spoon feed it to them because they don't want to spend a ton of time or money integrating something like this. So if we do most of the work for them, then I think it's a much easier sell
Yeah,
to
no,
any of the OTAs.
I agree. I agree. I think and it makes sense because it's the next step of you evolving and getting more and more customers and getting more properties and getting more everything in general. So yeah. And not to move on quickly, but I like doing like a quick round. So why is it that one? I mean, how long has that been the case since you thought about the idea?
That's something we've been thinking about for a while now. How do we scale from the B2B perspective? Because we've been B2C our whole existence, and that's been great. But I think if we want to get to where we want to be, 5, 10 years down the road, I think B2B partnerships are the way to do it. So listing our inventory on OTAs is one way to do that. And there's many others too. We can partner with airlines and hospitals, law firms, any company that has tired employees or traveling employees, right? Consulting firms, for example. So that's really where the push is right now, getting those B2B plays and really starting those conversations. But we're not going to abandon B2C. I think there's a lot of value
Hmm.
in that as well. So having both probably makes the most sense.
I agree. I agree. I think it makes sense. I mean, because if my company used Napper and they say, hey, you have this possibility, I mean, it gives you the awareness that you need that you said it was missing because more and more companies can use that service and give awareness to their employees. So I agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense. And moving to the founder perspective, like what's been the toughest thing about being an entrepreneur or building Napper?
Gosh, there's so many ways I could answer this. I think the toughest thing of all, so I will say that convincing investors that this is going to be a $1 billion thing has been a challenge.
Okay.
We have great traction, we have a great team, and we have a great story. All three of those things. Usually, those three things are enough to raise, but it's a very difficult time to do so right now, and we're not AI native. So I think that has been a challenge. It's certainly a challenge I'm up for, and I like a good challenge. I tend to do better work when my back is against the wall and the odds are greater. So, it's just another thing that we have to figure out. But we're still here, funding or not. So we'll be okay either way. But convincing investors because of the fact that there's no behemoth in this industry, I think it helps and it hurts us. Because Lyft was able to go to investors and say, hey, here's Uber, but we're going to be better than them. Uber is massive. We're going to make just as much money, but we're going to have a better business model. We're going to pay our drivers more. With us, it's like a lot of these investors don't even know about our competitors. So we almost have to convince them that we're going to be the first unicorn. We would be the first unicorn in microstays. There isn't one. Resort Pass is probably the biggest player in the space, but they're mostly amenities, right? They don't have a lot of rooms. So they're selling something different a lot of the time. And I don't even consider them much of a competitor because of that. They're a semi competitor. But like I said, that it's helped and hurt us to not have a big player who is, worldwide known.
Hmm. Makes sense. And just to close, I like to wrap up with quick three questions. Just answer whatever comes to mind first. So, what is one hospitality trend that you believe is being underestimated?
Underestimated. Good question. I think maybe sleep tourism
Hmm.
is being a little underestimated. I know it's trending, right? People are talking about it, but I think more and more people are going to be traveling to get rest, right? We think of travel, or we've historically thought of it as like, let's go to a new city and pack as much in as we can, see as many sites as we can. And a lot of people still do that. But more and more people are traveling for a week or two to get away from their 9 to 5 and just relax, get some quality rest in. And some hotels are embracing this. They're putting in nicer pillows, nicer sheets, white noise machines, but I still think it's underrated. I think more properties could be embracing that. trend.
Second question would be, what is one thing hotel operators misunderstand about daytime stays?
I think they misunderstand the use cases and why people are using them. Because if an airport property, for example, really understood their customers, they would be selling them directly. They should be selling these rates directly, but they're not. So I think they're also underestimating how many people need this. They're assuming that most people need it for an overnight stay. But because this is such an under the radar thing and the data isn't quite as big, the data set, as the overnight market, I think they just don't know what the demand is, but it's massive.
Yeah,
So
of course. It makes a lot of sense. I agree. So this is a last one, funny one. Are you personally good at taking naps? Or have you become like the chef who never eats at his own restaurant? Like,
I'm actually the chef who doesn't eat much at his own restaurant. I have researched sleep and sleep health and naps for many years now, and I know how beneficial they can be. But unfortunately for me, I'm not a very good napper.
okay.
I have tried to do it many times. And sometimes if I'm really exhausted, I can do it. But I work from home. So I'm doing it in my own bed where I should be able to nap theoretically, right? But it's really in your DNA how well of a napper or how good of a napper you're going to be. And I just have trouble falling asleep in the daytime.
Yeah.
So
I'm the
even if it's
same
for
way.
like half an hour. So that doesn't stop me from trying though, because I know how good it is. It's
Hmm.
just, it's one of those things. Some people can just like lay on a couch and they're out at any time of the day. And I really envy that because those are the people who can sleep on planes. I have trouble sleeping at any other time than my normal bedtime. So I don't take as many naps as I'd like to, unfortunately.
And your normal in the normal setup as well. I mean, if you're not in your known setup or your bed, it's even tougher. For me, planes, it's terrible. I hate it. I even have one of those pillows that you can like hug and you can lay down easily. Still, it's a pain. So I understand completely. So Jared, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, Nappr is doing something very very interesting, very particular, very new. It's addressing a very human need that, and it's also helping hotels unlock a value of their infrastructure they already have. So I love it. And I love how you switched to how you shifted the original idea to adapting to this actual infrastructure and need. So for everyone listening, you can learn more about Jared and book a flexible hotel stay through Nappr. Can you share the website and how can they connect with you?
Sure. Our website is just nappr.io. You can book right there, or you can download our mobile app on iOS or Android. Any three of those channels are very easy to use. You can reach me at Jared, Jared, at nappr.io. So just our website, nappr.io.
Amazing. So this has been another episode of Deep Current. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.